And so, Xavier, I wanted to start off. You shared with us a beautiful piece for piano, Smell the Roses, Blow Out the Candle. And I
Mhm.
wonder if you might just tell us a little bit about the genesis of this piece.
Yeah, the genesis of that piece is, I think, in line with a lot of my music at the moment, which is really about trying to find peace and serenity and calmness, which I think is something that a lot of us have been searching for. Um, but the very specific genesis of this piece is actually from my time as a substitute teacher for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Um, I was subbing for a transitional kindergarten class, right, which is like the little kids, right? They're like
Mm.
3, 4, maybe 5 years old, um, and I have no experience with kids that young, right? But luckily, there was a teacher's aide in that class,
Mm.
who is more or less there every day, and she knew exactly what to do. There was a moment, I think, when she was about to read a story, and the kids were a little rowdy. I think we just gotten back from recess or lunch or something like that. And she did this exercise where she said, "All right, now take both your hands in your left hand. I want you to hold a candle. In your right hand, I want you to hold a rose, right?" So she said, "Go ahead and sniff the rose and then blow out the candle." And for these little kids, that's like a deep
Mm.
breathing exercise, right? Um, so I took that form, I guess, or that idea of inhaling and exhaling in a repetitive, um, I yeah, in a repetitive sense to really hone in on being one with the breath, so to speak, and try to express that musically the best I could. So I mean, the piece is like very explicitly repetitive. It's the same thing, like was like 9 times or something like that. The same
Mm.
musical phrase, um, and it sort of follows this trajectory of building and releasing, right? Um, so that was my goal with that piece. Hopefully, when you listen, that also came across to some extent. Um, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful to hear the inspiration. What a great exercise. I assume there's imaginary candle and rose
Oh
and
yeah.
and that gives a whole nother level of creativity
Yeah.
to it. When I listened to it, I wasn't looking at the score, and so I didn't realize that. So is it exact repetition throughout, or is it subtly change?
No, no, it's an exact repetition, which I think is interesting because when you perform it, being a person, your repetitions aren't going to be exact. So there's like little,
Mm.
performance variations that come about. And from the audience perspective, I think that's always something cool to sort of latch onto when you
Mm.
listen. And this particular recording, I recorded myself.
Mm.
So I hear every little difference between the repetitions. The
Well,
only change that comes about is at the end, to signify the closing of the piece.
mhm. Well, it's a beautiful piece, and I thought when I was listening to it, I think there's a focus with this repetition, as you're saying, on the performative aspect too. But I think also how you wrote it with these different subtly changing harmonies that there's something about it that made me keep thinking I felt like there were these undulating revolutions through the piece, but I felt that there was something still shifting, maybe because of the way the harmony was
Mm,
structured or something. But I found it very, very beautiful and interesting.
I
Interesting to
appreciate
think
that.
about the use of repeats, which in contemporary music we don't see as much as in older music. I know there's Eric
Yeah.
Satie has a piece where he says repeated something like 240 times.
Was it like
Um,
vexations or something
yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, have you thought of the use of repeat in other works, or did this circumstance get you thinking of music in a different way?
No, actually, I do like repeats. It's very strange, I think, given how seldom you come across them now. I think it lends an uncanniness to new music. That's not super minimal in nature, but it adds an uncanniness in that something doesn't seem quite right or a little too familiar in the
Mm.
repetition. And it's actually, I think, for me personally, it's very hard to write a repeat. It takes a certain amount of restraint that
Mhm.
my inner uh, artist wants to fight with. Do you know what I mean? Like I always want to
Yeah.
like see how can I change? How can I develop? How can I do X Y Z? But when I'm like, okay, so I'll take my ego out of that and just make it an explicit repeat. Um, it makes me scared at times. like with this piece, I was like, is this gonna be weird to listen to? Is it gonna be uncomfortable? Are people gonna enjoy it? Am I gonna
Mhm.
enjoy listening to it, enjoy playing it? Um, yeah,
Well,
so I
some
think about it a lot.
Yeah, well, sometimes the parts of a piece where you're worried or you're scared if it's going to work or if someone's going to like it are sometimes the best parts of the piece because there's this vulnerability there. You're coming upon something that's maybe new or different for you.
True, that's great. Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah, I used to repeat probably one of the first repeats this last year in a piano piece as well, which I really felt it. Repetition is a beautiful thing, and you find repeats in other genres quite often. Um, this whole idea of developing variation that is in some contemporary classical music. Um, but yeah, it can evoke other musics as well. So I wonder how this work fits in with some other recent work you're writing. I know the work you submitted for the NEP, Somatic, has quite a different feel. It has much more active and continually changing landscapes in it. Wondering what your thoughts are in your musical world these days.
Um, I like to think that how I approach a piece or how I start the composition process is always in service of the piece itself.
Mhm.
So with somatic, uh, there was a very sort of, I think, ethereal sense that I was trying to capture. Um, that just in this, I guess, case, the repeats wouldn't have quite captured it. Though there are repeats in the music, they're just not as extensive as "Smell the Roses, Blow Out the Candle." Um,
Mhm.
but that being said, there is certain things, certain patterns in my work that I'm starting to really pick up on in a strange self introspective referential sense that
Mhm.
you know I think those aspects of the music themselves become sort of uh, a way for me to play with my own expectations in what I write.
Mhm.
If I know that my initial inclination is to turn right, then I'm thinking, well, is that going to be a smooth turn? Am I going to drift? Am I going to try and take that corner hard? Or am I going to turn left? I think a lot of times turn left is a little abrupt for me,
Mhm.
but how I'm going to take that turn. Um, so I guess in the Gestalt view, this this piano piece, which I wrote much more recently than Somatic, um, is sort of in the space of me drawing back, so to speak, trying to really get in touch with my intentionality when I write and trying to be very specific and knowing why I do what I do and
Mhm.
how that services the piece. Somatic low key is a little more. This sounds good. Not quite sure why that sounds good, but I like it. Um, so it's there's a there's a there's a trajectory there for sure. Um, but it's now I'm like really trying to be specific.
Well, I think in the life of a creative artist, I find this very much with myself too, is that we're kind of continually changing and thinking about how we work and what we want to say. And so ways you may be thinking of writing music a few years ago, you you find different periods in your life. And so where you find the inspiration and the meaning
It's so
of it.
funny because, like, looking in hindsight, I think this is just something, an illusion that comes with, studying history, but sort of studying the history of yourself, everything almost seems inevitable,
Hmm.
which is not always the case in the present moment. Um,
Oh,
and
definitely not. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes how can I fix this problem in the future?
yeah. But when you look back, you're like, it almost feels like there's no other way this could have happened. I could have done, this, solve this problem or whatever than the
Mhm.
way I did. I don't know if you feel that way as well in your own work, but it's definitely
Yeah,
something that I've noticed.
I do, in a sense, kind of historicize myself to see where I've been and where I'm leading, and that kind of can help me see maybe, oh, I've been moving in a certain direction, maybe with too many pieces, or that, oh, look, this idea I had three pieces ago, I could return to that and explore it in a new way. But I feel a bit similarly of seeing where my intuition leads me and where a piece seems like it wants to go and how to reconcile my goals, my conscious goals with my intuitive goals and the piece's momentum in some way. Um,
That's like the most exciting part.
yeah, this is you become having a conversation with the thing you're creating and you find new realms that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So what's coming up for you next or now?
Um, well, I have two commissions that I'm super excited about coming up in the spring of next year. One is with the Tucson Symphony.
Right?
That's gonna be super exciting. I'm looking forward to that for sure. Then the other is with the San Francisco Symphony, also gonna be super exciting. Also
Amazing.
looking forward to that for
Congratulations.
sure. Yeah. Um, so those are like the two main things that I'm really, you know, putting a lot of my mental toward. Um, it's gonna be exciting too. I don't know if you can see behind me. I got all these cameras
Yes.
that I'm looking to incorporate into the work itself.
In
I
a
think it's gonna be cool.
in a sonic way or visual way,
Both sonic
right?
and visually.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's great you have two big orchestra pieces on the docket coming up. Wondering what your feelings are with how you've explored the orchestra and what your goals are for where you want to take your work with the orchestra in these two pieces.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're two very different pieces, or they're gonna be two very different pieces once I write them. Um, just given even the forces that I have available to me between the two bands, right? I feel that orchestral music is exciting in the way that the most selfish way, always feeds my ego a little bit
Hmm.
to be super vulnerable and upfront about that.
Hmm.
But it's also a way, I think, to explore the collaborative process in a super short time frame in terms of like rehearsal and stuff, um, but on a grand scale, if that makes sense, as
Hmm.
opposed to chamber works, which I think are more fluid, more nebulous at times. A lot of that fluid and nebulous nature is in the pre-composition process with the orchestral music. Um, so that when it comes time to rehearse, it's like, all right, this is the music. Some things might need to be changed or edited or what have you, but more or less it needs to. I feel personally like it needs to be sight readable to an extent. just in terms of being cleanly and clearly notated, and my intentions being very clearly presented and in the music itself. Um, so I feel like maybe to that end, it's a little bit more of an extra musical practice and excitement that I get from the whole process.
Mm.
Where I feel like the pressure's on. I'm up against the what's I don't know, an appropriate uh, idiom to fit into this particular thing that I'm trying to say, but um, it feels a little more uh, like there's a little more pressure that even if it's just what I put on myself, and I'm always excited to sort of see how I rise to the occasion.
Well, really looking forward to hearing these pieces. There's definitely logistical issues and concerns with working with an orchestra, and it's a huge, totally unique medium where you have 60 to 100 people on the stage.
Yeah,
Very different than the trio or a quartet, and having how to communicate to all of them in this very big body of sound that you're
yeah,
working with.
yeah.
It's a
I'm
thrill to
just
it, great thrill.
a baby in the orchestral space too. So I'm coming at it eager to learn and humble and excited all at the same time.
I think it's a great way to approach it at any stage, definitely.
True.
So I'd love to open it up if there are any questions here from the audience. Yes. Wondering if you could say how you first started to know you wanted to be a composer.
Um, when did I know I wanted to be a composer? Maybe like eighth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. I was in band in middle school. I played the tuba. I never practiced.
Mm,
That's probably what made me want to write.
yeah.
Because I would look at the music and I was just looking at this and trying to figure out how it works, and trying to recreate it is a lot more fun than practicing. So I never fell in love with performing.
Mm,
Um, but I do like to study music and write music. So I wrote a few things at that time in my life. A lot of piano works using some free softwares. I'm not even sure if I can remember the name right now.
yeah.
But it wasn't really until probably like late high school that I felt the drive to be like a composer, because I played sports a lot before that time in my life. Um, and I had a lot of good music teachers in high school that really cultivated or helped me cultivate my love for music that really got me on that path. Yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer. So I gradually decided between seventh and 12th grade. It was one long decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had I love performing and did quite a lot of it, but there was a point where I knew to be a professional performer, I needed to practice more, and I felt like I could compose all day long and
Yeah,
could not get myself to. I love performing, but not practicing. You need to practice.
yeah,
We have one other question about how did these two commissions come about, and how interesting it is to see how these things happen. So,
yeah. Okay, so I'll start with the Tucson Symphony Orchestra Commission. That started, or that came about um, a couple years ago is when we started talking. I had done one of the earshot readings that American Composers American Composers Orchestra will host, and Tucson was the partner orchestra for this particular reading, which is nice because I'm from New Mexico, so I had that Southwest region familiarity. Um, but over the next couple of years, we had talked about uh, or about getting together a commission for me to write a new piece in this upcoming 24-25 season. Um, and it just came to fruition. It's got the contract signed, I think, late last fall, right? So it was a long process between the initial conversations to the contract, um, but it was exciting all the way through. The San Francisco one was a competition. It was the Emerging Black Composers competition. Um, so that's a whole separate, I guess, way in. Um, but that is super exciting because there's a lot of support from both the symphony and the conservatory, or the San
Mhm.
Francisco Conservatory, um, in developing the piece that I'm really leaning on and will continue to lean on. And then just sort of getting involved in San Francisco itself. My brother actually lives up in Walnut Creek, which is,
Mhm.
I guess, a small suburb. It's not that small, but it's a suburb outside of San Francisco. Um, and he's super involved in the music scene in the, I guess, producer, songwriter, singer sense. Um, so me getting up there and getting involved in the more concert music world, it's like my brother and I are just sort of enveloping the Bay Area and just trying to uh, really get into the fabric of the community and
Mhm.
really see what we can do. Um, but yeah, it's two totally different ways in that feel in hindsight. This is one of those situations where in hindsight it does not feel inevitable. It feels like I got extremely lucky
You
to
it
have gotten both of these commissions.
Yeah, well, congratulations on them.
Thank you.
I think it's always interesting for composers to learn the various pathways for building a career. And I know that each piece that I'm writing, there's a whole story of how it may have come about from a conversation 10 years ago, a relationship that is built, or some of these programs like the ACO readings, the
Mm-hmm.
composer competition, NEP, call for scores, how someone may see you on the interview and think of you a few years down the road, and so it's always interesting.
Yeah,
And we have
yeah,
all these balls juggling in the air, and seeing where different projects take us.
absolutely. And I'll always be as transparent as I can be about that kind of stuff because I feel like even now, but especially when I was in school and stuff, I feel like there's a lot of mystery around the whole process, um,
Hmm.
that can be sort of frightening or turn people away, uh, or sort of make it so people don't quite quite know that you need to be in your own sort of business manager and administrator, outside of the creative part. Um, so I feel like the more that is known and the more apparent that is, that can only be helpful. At least it would have been for me.
Yeah, no, I know at Brown we have professionalization workshops where I teach some of the business aspects of
Mm,
music, how you what's going on behind the scenes, if you don't have a manager or if you seek out a manager, and what the day-to-day life can be like. It's of
mm.
course varies for every different person, but um, there's a lot more that goes on in life of a composer than composing sometimes.
Yeah, it's like a small business.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to have you here. Thank you so much, Xavier, for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and look forward to your upcoming pieces.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to chat. I had a lot of fun.
Okay, thank you.